Welcome to Courageous Conviction. Remember that Jeff and I record each Saturday 5 episodes. So please hit the like button, subscribe so you catch all 5 episodes. We usually start out with one theme or topic. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes to really understand it. Some things are more sensitive than others right now, what's going on in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe, and let's jump into this video.
That is an important differentiation, that
and what we're trying to say is the grass isn't greener. Jeff and I have been to many other pastures, and it isn't any greener at all. This is the only way. This is the only way. And I've been to other churches. When I came back, Jeff, I went to other Christian churches and I tried to come back, but it just was not there. Right. You felt the absence of the proper authority. I'm sorry. Good people, good sermons, but just didn't have that authority. And I knew it and I felt it. Even though I tried to deny it, I couldn't. You can say, well, it's because your mindset. No. I'm a convert to the church. I was a member of other Christian church before I was converted here. So I could easily have slipped back into just general Christianity, right? And it just didn't fit. It didn't work. It
doesn't have the whole depth of what Jesus Christ and the gospel of Jesus Christ really is. Other Christian churches, in fact, I just like you, when I was looking to not go back to the church and I wanted God in my life again, I looked at other churches, not just Christian churches, but I looked at Islam, I looked at the Hare Krishnas, and there was a lot of interesting paths. I write that in my book, in Revving the Soul.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I even looked into Islam. I did a little research on Islam too. All I had to do my research, and I realized, this is a dead end. I'm not going this direction.
Right. No, but when you read some other, like I was more not, I was branched off of Islam into Sufism, and I like that aspect of Islam a little bit better. Still do, but obviously I think Jesus Christ is the only way, and the Church of Jesus Christ is the only way. But like you said, there's still going to be members, and I don't think it's just going to be Christians. There's going to be Muslims, because I look at my friends, that are from Africa, and they come to my house, and I'm always careful to make sure that whatever I make is halal, and or at least not going to help them break their code of their dietary needs or whatever, and if they need to pray, there's a yoga mat and there's a corner, and go ahead, and my kids are used to that, and then we'll have break bread or have lunch and or dinner, whatever. And I think we're going to see that with the tents of Zion down the road, where you're going to see just good other children of God, and that's where we're locking arms and becoming more like-minded. I think we have to be open, and not discuss, somebody else's Jesus is the wrong Jesus or whatever, at this point. Or if Jesus is gay, or Joseph Smith was gay. That's a new thing now, right? That Jesus and Joseph were gay by certain. Well,
so that's, I didn't
want to go down that route, because that's not even, because obviously there's there's something to be said that's not right. I can handle the part where, somebody has, a different concept of Jesus Christ, who was the Savior, or even if, like the Muslims, that they believe Jesus Christ is a great prophet, he's coming back. Okay. We're not going to fight about those things, because I'm still looking at the core people, at what their values are that align with our values. Like, we believe in families. We believe that a marriage is between a man and a woman. We believe, and these are things that are, basic core values that can't be corrupted with ideas that Jesus, was something that he wasn't, right? And to become inspired. Eventually people come together anyway, if they're really inspired, and they will see and want to know our Father in heaven.
Well, let's see how the Law of Consecration worked and what this suggested is going to be going forward. So we get an idea of how the Law of Consecration is going to work. Okay, it's not a welfare state, and that's the misconception of many members. And your Latino members think it's a welfare state, right? Yeah. That's the problem. Okay,
let's bring this around, and that will that be kind of our closing kind of?
Yeah. Let's go through this, and we'll wrap it up with this. Okay, there's a few points here on this, though, so it'll take us a few minutes, and we can come back into this next Saturday too.
Yeah,
and I think it'd be a good point to even bring up some of those actual quotes from Brigham and Joseph about this time, right? Here we go. Here's how it works. Step one, okay, first of all, this is going to come out of section 42 is the idea, because you're going to go to the Doctrine and Covenants, section 42. You can get the gist of a lot of this stuff. Let's just go through these bullet points here. Okay, the saints must make up their minds to love the Lord and keep all of his commandments. Okay, so we're already setting a standard now. That's not an all-inclusive, come as you are, stay as you are attitude. That's number one. You're going to have to obey the commandments. There's a standard right there, right? 2, they must consecrate, quote unquote, their properties to the Lord with a covenant and a deed which cannot be broken. Now let's get back to that, because that's where people think the welfare state, we're going to turn it all over. It's all going to become one in common, right? That's not true. This is true doctrine. These properties are then to be placed in the hands of the bishop and his counselors for distribution. All right. Now, this is interesting. Each steward, now we become stewards over land and stewards over responsibilities, which we are still today in practicing when we get a calling. We become a steward over those people that we're called to serve, right? Mm-hmm. And that's our responsibility. So when we're not doing our calling, we're failing in our stewardship. So think now that if you're not doing your calling, or you are more apathetic in your calling, you probably won't qualify to enter that tent of Zion. And that's where the protection is going to be. So if you want to stay in the blue states, have at it. Then be apathetic in your calling. You want to live that standard, then you're going to start living that standard now, right?
Even my wife, who wanted to move here to this blue state, we're looking at, at other states that we could move to already, that are red, just because, and I'll
certain things things are happening already, right? Okay. So anyway, so each steward or member then receives his portion. This must be sufficient for himself and family. This is accomplished by having the bishop distribute the stewardships in such a way that each member would become equal. Here we go. According to his family, according to his circumstances, and his wants and needs. But only if his wants and needs are just will they be granted. Now, there is a key right there.
Are just.
The equality in what your wants and needs are. You, Jeff, may have 40 acres because that's your want and your need, and you can provide that stewardship to work those 40 acres and help the church at the same time grow because you're taking on greater responsibility, right? I may not. I may feel I only want 10 acres, right? But we had an equal opportunity to take on stewardship. Does that make sense? But the end result is not going to be the same. Now, is that in common or is that private? We're going to go on to learn that stewardship will be given back as titled land to the actual owner, not the church. Hold on, listen here. Whatever stewardship property a man receives must be deeded unto him and made sure according to the laws of the land. He would get title back in the US of A. It remains his even if he leaves Zion, the order. So you get that? So the communism, socialism has nothing to do with the law of consecration because that's all governed, that's all that stays in ownership by the government, right? We take ownership responsibility. We take stewardship over that land. We can't just go back and say, well, the water line's broke. Bishop, get our governance out there to fix it. It doesn't work that way, right?
You
5.
Be a good steward.
So here we go. I'm gonna expand upon 5 a little bit. It says, however, since it is consecrated property, the steward will be required of God to render account of his stewardship over the property, both in time and in eternity. Under the laws of land, private property is deeded to the steward by the bishop, but under God's law, the matter goes much further. It is consecrated property for which the Lord will require an accounting. Even if the steward takes it out of the order, the same rule applies if a person is excommunicated, as the Lord says, and if they are not faithful, they shall not have fellowship in the church, yet they may remain upon their inheritances according to the laws of the land. So private property remains in Zion. I'm just going to go through these points real quick here. And these are all things we can unpack down the road, Jeff. And I think that's important because right now we're talking about giving everything away, like this sister wanted to do there with the fireworks, right? And just open it back up to where it became unsafe now for our children and not so comfortable for us so that we could share, right? Well, First and foremost, a lot of those people came late to the fireworks. They should have been there early. to get their space, right? That's not our doing. The parable of the 10 virgins, I think, solidifies that right there. It cancels that right there. Like, those that are prepared are those that the Lord receives, and those that are not, I'm sorry. There's a consequence to it. And we can't bleed our hearts here. We can feel bad for them all we want to, but justice has to have its measure. Now listen, if he receives back less than he gave, so you give 30 acres, you get 40 back. I give 100, I only get 10 back, because that's what I desire. That's what I feel I can fulfill. Now, here's the thing, and here's where we got to go with this. Before we can go any further, we have to be of one mind. And that mindset is that we have to be honest people. We have to understand the law. We have to understand what the law of justice is and what the law of mercy is, and how that balance exists. And that's why only one of 10 will be qualified to enter under that tent of Zion, right? And that's that safety. So going here, if he receives back less than he gave, the residue is to remain the property of the church for distribution to others in need. This surplus residue can never be claimed by the donor once it's deeded back to the church. Okay. Yeah. But you get yours back. Remember, everybody's going to be honest about this. We're all going to have to be honest. And this is why it's so important that we have to be honest about what we're facing today, because we're on the cuff of this formation of Zion, the tent of Zion, right? And we're going to have to learn, if we want to be a member of this law of consecration and practicing it, which I hope to be. I'm supported 100%. I think it is the most, of all my research and studies, this is the Lord's order, and it makes a lot of sense. Now here, therefore, every man should be made accountable unto me, a steward over his own property. This is the Lord speaking. He transacts all business in connection with the stewardship and in his own name. He is to treat his stewardship as a talent, which is to be developed and improved until he may gain other talents, yea, even 100-fold. So maybe we don't get property back, a lot of property. Maybe I'm a tech person, let's say, right? Let's say John Doe's a tech person. He doesn't have a lot of property. He has his home. So he's going to probably give it and then get it back, his home. But what's his stewardship going to be then? Well, provide technological support to the other members of Zion, right? Yeah. And that'll be his job. And he has a compensation for that job, right? And that compensation will be determined by him, obviously with the approval of the bishopric, to make sure that he is being a just and honest man. So and we can go on and read here. And for time for today, we don't have that. We can go next week. I'd like to break this down some more. Because I think that is how we have to treat the immigrants coming in. The same idea that, okay, great, we want you to have an opportunity, but here's a standard. What do you bring into the table? There's a lot of people are going to come to the table with nothing, but they're willing to go develop those talents. And the Lord's going to require development of talents. In other words, you're going to have to bring something to the table.
Right, like a willingness to work.
And that's where we come back to what you're saying. Willingness to work. You want to run with this a little bit? Go ahead.
Well, and I think that's what it comes down to, is that we can't support people that aren't willing to be a part of the fold. And if you're not, then ship out. And if you don't want to ship out, we'll ship you out. So it's that kind of thing. I think you can't be all inclusive if there's going to be part of that team that isn't going to support the end goal. And that's where we're at right now.
And that's where we're at. And so how do we assimilate? Well, that's the things we're going to come up with. In closing, Jeff and I were just talking off air that I was preparing to go down to the Darien Gap and so forth, and to try to go in and film some things that not many people have done. But since we've been talking about all this over the last weeks, there's been others that have gone down there and actually spent a bunch of money and went through and paid off cartel and went through and were able to film and do the whole trek. So there's a budget. Yeah. And for me to go down there, it doesn't make any sense for me to go down and put my life in jeopardy right now if it's already been done. However, so that's the Darien Gap. And there's videos out there that can show you I want to go and show you the bridges being built, the roads being built to bring through this trafficking, a lot of trial trafficking going on here. In fact, last night I sat down with my daughter, we watched a movie about this, and, she was pretty much speechless. It really shocked her to see these young girls being trafficked. And she saw, The Sound of Freedom as well. And she's waking up to this because this is going to be her life. And this movie that we saw, though, based off a true story, it was actually U.S. and the U.S. foster care and those agencies that go along with the foster care that actually showing that are doing the trafficking, right? They age them out and they sell them to traffickers. because they have no place else to go. They're gonna be homeless.
They can prove that they need to be hunted down, and you know what? Those are people that need to go down.
And the problem is that it's much broader spread than people realize, and I think that church members want to realize, because I think everybody in the church wants to pretty much give humanity the leg up. In other words, give them the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. But we have to understand.
It's hard to believe that there would be a concerted effort to allow for something like that. To allow for child trafficking within a foster care system. Now, it sounds conspiratorial, and there does need to be some evidence.
It is a conspiracy. It is. The bottom line, it's a conspiracy. It's not conspiratorial. It is a conspiracy. It's being withheld from us. And and one thing with Tim Pool, and I hope he comes to this realization one day, he will not come to the point where this is, there's a body of people that are pulling the strings that cause this to happen. He just thinks there's a bunch of people simultaneously coming together by coincidence and just running with this because that's just what they're taught and that's what they're indoctrinated with. We know from the Book of Mormon that there are.
Oh, there's people that are definitely bad people that are trying to do things that they know what they're doing. It's not, and they're getting together with other people and they're creating, crimes and creating things less safe for children that are vulnerable. And that has to change somehow or other, even if they're doing things, and not, as organized, they're one-offs or whatever. Those people need to be found and dealt with. The main thing is that, vulnerable children need to be protected, and how we get around to doing that, is going to kind of measure how good of a society we really are. We can't turn a blind eye to that kind of thing.
Well, let me tell you my experience in Ecuador. My daughter could not go out in the street and play with the kids,
right?
Because unless you just don't do that, right? Because the kidnappings are enough to where you had to worry about that, right? And so we had to live in a home that was gated. I'm talking about gated. I'm talking about a fence built for people not to be able to come in, walled in home. We had walled in home, so everything around us was walls. The front it was a metal, so we tried to put, the people that we rented the home from there, they put grids in there so you could see out in the street. But other than that, you were locked in, and had wire on top of that. There was electrical wire and cameras. That's how we lived. And when they still got into our home and tried to kidnap my daughter, right? And I had her watch this thinking, this could be you, honey. This could be you. So that's going to bring a compassion for her, right? But also I'm hoping it's going to really draw in her out a desire for justice to be served, right? We can't just let this go. We can't just leave our borders open. There has to be a law to have order. And our God is a God of order. He's not a God of chaos. And that's what we have right now is chaos, right? Yep. And that's the bottom line, Jeff.
Get rid of the chaos.
Well, and it needs to be weeded out by standards, and that's a standard that needs to be set. So that principle then carries all the way over into what we're seeing right now with LGBTQ, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a standard, right?
Well, I don't mean get rid of the chaos and because you're turning a blind eye to things.
No, I know you're talking about
enough. I'm talking about we need to resolve the chaos, and it might mean becoming more chaotic. In a sense.
And I just want to throw this in there. Understanding that private property is part of law of consecration, then takes anything that's rooted in Marxism, any type of government that's rooted in Marxism, and shows you it's not of the Lord. That's socialism included, right? Yeah. So we need to be careful, all right? And that's where I'll end today. Just saying that we need to go out and do our research, as Elder Bednar stated. Education doesn't mean get a college degree. Go out and figure out how to figure things out for yourself. Yeah. And I was blasted for that because when the whole mantra of get the jab, and I was going around as a state representative and telling people, do your research yourself. Don't even confide in your doctors right now, right? And I had a bishop go to my stake president and say, hey, this guy needs to be tried for apostasy in the church. My stake president looked at them and said, have you done your research? Are you sure he's wrong? And they looked at him, and this bishop is kind of like bucking to want to be the next stake president right now, right? He's kind of like playing that politics, if you will. And real nice guy, super nice guy, but he's got his own motive, right? And he responded back to my stake president and say, well, no. And the interesting thing was, I gave him a book a year earlier that he could understand himself. He gave it back to me. It was a brand new book. Wasn't even creased. Said he read it. He didn't read it. And that's typical. People don't read. They have the opportunities. They think they get their own information. They hear it from hearing from others. They think that that's good. They don't research themselves, and that's what they make their decisions on. He was going to go and blast me. Now it's very clear with Elder Bednar's statements recently that I was correct. He was wrong, right? But he was the bishop. I was in the stake. My stake president defended me, and they told him, "Hey, how do you know he's wrong? Have you done research?" His response was no. He said, well, go back to your research, then you come back and tell me if he's teaching apostasy or not. Obviously, they never went back, right?
Well, there's a lot of people that are afraid of, even another brother of mine who's active in the church. He's like, well, you got to be careful about, apostatizing. I'm like, you know what? I'm always going to be, and I think we are both unanimous there when it comes to supportive of the leadership. Absolutely, but we're not talking about that. Being supportive doesn't mean you can't have your own ideas. And you can't, you got to be able to think what's best for you, and you have to be able to have your own revelation. It doesn't mean you're revealing for the church, but hey, things like the jab, I got the jab 3 times. I'm glad I didn't get it a 4th, because there's some science there that says that it actually does alter your DNA.
With 3,
with 4.
With 3, I just read one recently with 3.
No, it could be 3, it could be 4. So I'm doomed one way or the other, But hopefully it's 4 and not 3. But we'll see what happens there if I grow.
You just believe that, and mind over matter here, right?
Hey, I've got what I got, So I've got to be able to at least be strong and move forward. But even people that were diehard, like my stepfather, he got the shot, and my mother did. And he had heart problems, a lot of serious ones, so they're, certainly in their 80s, and they're absolutely not going to get another shot. But the point is that we have to understand on our own what's going on in life, and still be supportive, of our dear prophet and the apostles that give us good information. But yeah, they're talking for the church on a global scale. So there's a lot of things that they're not saying in conference that I feel like, we need to kind of understand and not deviate from the actual core doctrine, and still need to support the Constitution of the United States. And we need to support important documents like, the Family Proclamation. Those things aren't to be diluted. And I don't think that our leadership is saying that, even with, actions like, hiring some communications director that thinks differently, or having historians that thought differently back in the 70s, that changed the idea of what church history was about, because they wanted to infiltrate that narrative. I think that it's very important for us to get back to the basics. There has to be some more black and white, right and wrong, and yeah, enough of this coddling, people that want to believe that, well, it's okay to think a different way.
I thank you for being with us on Courageous Conviction. Remember, there's 5 episodes each week that we put out. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes, so stay with us, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't miss tomorrow's episode on Courageous Conviction.